Good day, good day. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Jay, and this is Homeschool Yo Kids podcast. Before we get started, please be sure to check out homeschoolyourkidsexpo.com. That's where you'll see our traveling schedule as well as the many resources that we offer to families on their educational journey to support their children and to ensure that they are, involved. And remember, homeschooling was never meant to be done alone. It will always take a village. So major shout out to a couple of our sponsors that are mission to ensure that you find your tribe. So Classical Conversations, I know you've heard of them, CC in most communities, but they are a nationwide curriculum provider. They also offer community support, so they are pretty dope. And Base Camped, which is a amazing new app they just released in February. It's pretty cool. I downloaded it. It's like a Zillow for homeschoolers. It's like you can find community resources in your area as well as families that have kids your age, the same age as your kids and things of that nature. So check them out. It's free to download. So boom, boom. All right. And so today we have Amy. Amy, introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Anderson, and I am from Colorado, and I'm the founder of an organization called Reschool. I'll tell you more about Reschool in a bit, but I'm also a mom. I have two kids that are 23 and 27, so they're adulting-ish. And
Right.
in addition to starting Reschool, I found a founder of a charter school back in the late 90s that's still around. So it's about the same age as my son. It's a K through 8 school. And I've done a variety of things in education throughout time, mostly around how to expand access to more opportunities for families and communities around educational options. And so for a long, long time, that was around how do you create different kind of school models. And my work has much more evolved as I've gotten closer to what families actually want and are looking for their children. And so Reschool is much more about creating an education system that centers families at the core and then provides access to the opportunities that they're seeking.
Okay, okay. Well, before we get to Reschool, walk us to how did you get here? How did you get to this is what I'm going to do and this is what the families need?
Yeah. So it was a long journey. I've been in education in various roles for over 30 years. And the For the first 20 years, I'd say most of my work was I was introduced to the charter school world at a very young age in my 20s. I was living in Minnesota at the time, and the teachers who passed the first charter school on the country, I worked for them. They had an organization that they stood up, and their goal was to create more learner-centered, interesting kind of school models where teachers had a lot more autonomy to make decisions. And so I was introduced to this idea that you don't have to accept the system for what it is. You can actually, if you bring people together and have a coalition like they did of educators, you can actually get something through a legislature and create something different and that you think is a value. And so that's been kind of a common thread of my work always is one, like what is going on in the system that is good for kids and families that people are, and how do we have more of that? And then where are things that we have gaps? And then how do we solve for that? And so I've started schools, as I said. I worked at the Colorado Department of Education, where I was in charge of innovation and choice. I learned education policy and got my PhD to understand how the system works and how you finance schools. And so it was just a kind of a journey where I was trying to figure out what are all of the different pieces and what levers can you pull to make change. And after doing that for 20 years, I was working at the Department of Education here in Colorado. I was an associate commissioner, so I had a big job, and I was had a lot of responsibility, and I was having a lot of the same conversations and hearing the same stories that I'd been hearing the decade before and the decade before, in that there were kids for whom the system was still not working. They were not having the same experience. They were finding the challenges. They were not getting the kind of support that they needed. And so I thought maybe this idea of creating shifts to the system or creating new schools without deeply engaging community is not going to ever transform in a way that's going to meet the needs of all kids. And so I left, and I didn't left to start Reschool. I left to understand like what is the experience that families who had been marginalized by our systems, who were not having their needs met in the same way, what actually was their experience on a day-to-day basis. And I shadowed through partners who had trusted relationships with families. I was able to shadow them. Like I literally shadowed 7 families over the course of a couple of weeks and followed kind of one of their kids, and kind of what their journey was through that day, who they were with, who was caring for them, what kind of educational experiences they were having. And that one like shadowing experience kind of anchored everything that we've done to since then at Reschool. And that was in 2014 when we did that shadowing. And the big ahas were kids spend much more of their time outside of school than they do inside of school. And I've since learned it's 80% of your waking hours as a young person are outside of school. And you're only in school if you're not homeschooling, of course, 20% of the time. And yet, that 80% of time when kids aren't in school is a world that can be hard to navigate. There's a lot of opportunities that people are seeking, but they don't have the resources to pay for them. And so there were challenges. And so the vision became, what if we could co-create with these families in partnership an education system that would enable them to have access to learning that happens everywhere? If they want to go learn in a school for part of their day, awesome. What's the right school and best school for them? And if they don't, how do you bundle learning together like in a homeschool kind of a way? And maybe what we found is that we have most of the families we work with want a hybrid approach where there may be some things that they're getting from a school-based experience, and then there's also things that they need outside of school. And so much of our work has been, how do you create that outside of school system in a way that's equitable and family centered? And I can share some of the concepts that have emerged from that, but I don't want to, I'll stop talking so that you can catch up and ask me some questions.
No, I am so intrigued. Okay, so you were in the interworkings of the school system, like you were there, Department of Education. That's a lot. That's because, I've talked to teachers, I've talked to superintendents, I've talked to principals. I've never talked to anyone who's been downtown, like
Yeah.
downtown. So yes, and with that, you said like you kept hearing a similar story as to it's just not working, it's just not serving the whole, or the majority rather.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were, I mean, it's not that there aren't really good, smart people who are trying to make it better. There really are. But the system, the K-12 education system as we have it, was designed for a different time. And even then, I think, when it was designed, it still wasn't meeting the needs of all kids, right? Like, but our society has evolved in such a way that the system has not been able to keep up. And it's impossible. What I learned by working in the department is it's impossible to change something while you're running it at the same time, because I was so busy just doing the day-to-day things you need to do to make sure the system as we know it runs as well as possible, that you don't really have the space. Even though part of my job was supposed to be about innovation, I didn't have the space or resources to actually do
Do
that part of my
innovation.
job.
Yeah, no, and I mean, you hear that from teachers. Like, we go in there gung ho, like, oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. And then you don't know that they're about to give you a whole list of what you actually are gonna do. And so it's like, when am I gonna do this? Or when do I have time to do this? And it's just like, oh, I can't, this isn't gonna work. This isn't how I envisioned this. And so understanding like, okay, you're in the system and you see the issues with it, but you're so boggled down with everything that is the system that you um cannot do what you
Yeah.
really want to do.
And right now, at this moment in time we're in, I can't even imagine what it's like, right?
I
Being in.
say it too.
I mean, it's just so unpredictable in terms of what's happening every week to week. It's pretty scary. I feel bad for anyone that's working in the system and for kids and parents. It's a really, really unsettling time.
Yes, and I know there's so many things like topics and things you probably can't talk about in the classroom that kids want to talk about in the
Uh-huh.
classroom that the administration has said this is off limits, don't discuss this, don't discuss that. I could just imagine just like you said, the culture of it all right now in the school system is, I know it's pins and needles for all.
Right. And that's why like so much of like the freedom I feel like I've had for the last, 12 years since I left, working in the system is working outside the system where I'm working with a lot of educators who've left the system for various reasons, including they weren't allowed to talk about or teach the kinds of things they wanted to. So they started their own nonprofits where they can do that, or parents who
Right.
wanted their kids to have a different kind of experience or more culturally relevant experience or to be able to travel like you all are and see the world. And you can't do that like by, being in the system as we know it. So how do we have a opportunities for more kids to be able to do the kind of things that you're doing and others are doing that really expose kids to the real world learning that is critical to their future?
Yes, yes. Yes. Because like you started with the system wasn't created for for a child to be whole in general. I don't think it had anything to do with the child and it was to build up workers. It was supposed to, industrialize to make sure that we had workers when it was time for these companies to run. So it didn't care about the child, it didn't care about their imagination, they didn't care about, their creativity, their purpose, any of that. None of that was brought into the factoring of creating schools. And so we have to really, really understand and grasp that and understand like this is the model that was set and it hasn't gone from that model very much. That's the wild part
Yeah,
is it's like, are
it's
you even trying to keep up with this, the changes of the world? It's like, no, not really. We're
no,
still
and
trying to
and
pay
like, and
workers.
that's why most kids and parents and they seek those kinds of things outside of school that help them find what they're interested in to kind of expand their curiosity, to try things, to that's largely become the kind of things you do outside of school in the summertime after school. And we've found like it's very expensive and it's gotten more and more expensive over the years. So when we first started working with families to say, here, they wanted access to summer learning for their children. And so what we did was we ran our first learning dollar fund where we raised private dollars. We gave families each a certain amount of money on a debit card, similar to what education savings accounts have become today. But at that time, I think maybe Arizona had the one already. And it was a supplemental ESA, not to replace school or instead of school, but out of school stuff. Anyway, we ran our first Learning Dollar Fund that summer, and it was very popular. It was small. And then we've since evolved to the point where we've now raised and given out over almost $800,000 across the state for kids to access learning outside of school. But when we first started doing that, I'd say for like a week-long summer camp, it was maybe like $250 to $300, and maybe it was like 9 to 3 kind of a thing. Now it's approaching like 600-700+ dollars a week, and that even is like I think even like the ones at the rec kind of programs that are like more affordable are still at least $500 to $600 for a week. So that's a lot, when you have multiple kids, and so we're trying to figure out how to solve for that challenge because we don't have education savings accounts here in Colorado, and most of our families are in school for a chunk of the day, and then we're trying to figure out how we have a sustainable source of funding for them when they're not in school. And mostly we've been doing it through philanthropy, but we've started to slowly get some public funding to start, kind of helping support this too. So our goal is eventually to have more of that kind of public funding so more kids can do it.
I know, I think it's wild that you said only 80% of the time is spent or waking time is or awake time is spent in the school for kids. Because
Only
you would think that
20,
oh, only 20, only yes. Ooh, flip that around. Yes, only 20% is spent. I know that's the wild part. Because you think that is so much more because it's like 180 days out the year and what, like well, like 7 hours out the day. So you're thinking like, is it like that's a long time. And like I'm thinking, I don't know, especially when I was there, it felt like forever.
yeah.
Um, but like, okay, you thinking you got the weekends, you got the holidays, and you got summer break, and then you have the, all the hours that they're not in school, which is 4 to whatever. So it's like, okay, it is only 20%. And then that brings me back because I just had the conversation about parent involvement and how important and how we cannot like do away with parent involvement. Like there's no there's no way that a child will reach their success without the involvement of their parent in their education, in my opinion.
Of course.
You know, I just feel like it has to come and start at home.
Yep.
And so it's like to know that, okay, 20% of the time is only spent in these classroom settings, and the other 80% is essentially at home or wherever it is else they're at, but essentially with their parent. You got to remember, like, the parent is important in this factor, and we have to keep them front and center in all of this.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that that was also something that became apparent when we did that shadowing is, and if it's sometimes it's parents, sometimes it's their aunt that lives a few doors down or a grandparent. And one of the things that we are working on now that I've been wanting to get to for a long time that we just didn't have the resources to do until now is there's a lot of like incredible learning that happens in the home that kids have, whether that's with their family, their parents or their grandparents or whoever, like they're learning how to cook or they're learning different like artistic skills or they're just learning life skills that are critical and we don't count that learning. And so part of what we're trying to do now is we know where kids are going and accessing opportunities and the value we know anecdotally from stories and things that we can share, but what we never have really done is capture like specifically like what are those skills and competencies and knowledge and experiences that matter to them as they become adults that they're getting from these experiences that they have outside of school. It might be someplace where they're working. It might be an experience they're having in their community. It might be something they're doing with their family. Like how do they start to be able to and I know as homeschool families, you all are doing this all the time, but like how do we hold that story and to be able to tell it for them to kids be able to tell it to others as they go that will matter to them in their lives. Maybe it's somebody who wants to hire them. Maybe it's somebody who wants, they want to go do some post-secondary learning opportunity at some stage, or they want to apply for a scholarship. I don't know, but like we have to have a more comprehensive way of telling that story. And we're learning from homeschool families in part how to do that. One of the people I'm working with on this project has been working with some homeschool moms to develop transcripts that their kids can use when they apply to go to college, for example, because it's just a different way of learning, and you don't have the traditional like Carnegie units like you do if you go to a regular high school.
Yes, no, it is important. And I know even with the journey that we're on, I'm always trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we share more? Because I'm not really a social media person, and it's like, but y'all want to know so much. And I feel like I share enough on the podcast. And it's like, just tune into the podcast, guys. Like, I share a lot about what we do and how we do. But my girls they've been asking for a YouTube channel since they were like what, 3 and 5. And I'm like, okay, guys, I'm almost there. Like we getting there. Like I've been sharing more, and like it's like I'm gonna get there. Um, but people do need to see because the stories are important. The walks are important. That's why I have this platform because I like to share all of the different ways that people homeschool, all of the different ways that they educate, all the different resources that are being created to ensure that, hey, if that doesn't work for you, this may work for you. If that doesn't work for you, this may work for you because it's not a one size, fit all model. And that's the important thing. And I know when you followed those 7 families, you saw 7 different realities. It was not the same for anyone.
No, not at all. And what you're doing is what we've come to like call a learner advocate. Other people might call it a navigator, or in Spanish speaking communities, it's a promotora, and it's somebody who is looked to as a trusted resource in the community, who people can turn to when they need access to information or resources or guidance. It's an important part of the system. And when you're talking about a system where you're kind of unbundling and trying to rebundle learning around the needs of a group of kids or family or whatever, you need to have those people who you can turn to or places you can go, whether it's a YouTube channel or a website that I'm curious to learn more about this base camp thing you talked about in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of resources are necessary so that it saves people times. Other people have already curated it. Like it allows more people to enter the space because they don't have to figure it all out by themselves.
Indeed, because it can get overwhelming because there is so much out there, so much. And I do have a lot of families reach out and they're asking, like, I have my third grader, I need some resources for them. We're in this state and da da da. And I get to, oh, okay, who have I talked to? I always start with that. Who have I talked to? And then I send out over links and I give a description of what it is that I'm sending over and everything because it is about finding what I'm just big on choices. Like I'm really big on choices. And I feel like a lot of parents don't know all the choices that they have as far as education goes with their children. It is a automatic that we think, okay, 5 years old, public school. Like that's it. Like that's what we know. A lot of homeschools are first generational homeschoolers. A lot of them aren't, it's not
Mhm.
something that has been repeated for them yet. But with them doing it now they're kids, and I'm always curious, like, especially when they have adult kids. Now it's like, are your kids gonna homeschool? And I know mine have talked about building schools, and I think that's so dope. Like for them to be having that mindset, because they've met micro school owners. We've been in plenty of micro schools now. And so it's just understanding that there's different models out there. Like it's not a like, oh, 5 years old, they gotta go here. And even five isn't even a mandate for all the states. Learned that when I was creating my app. I just shared that too on another episode. I thought 5 years old for the longest was okay. When you turn five, you go to school. Like some
Mhm.
people don't have to send their kids to school until 8.
Oh, really?
Like
I always thought it was 5 or 6. Yeah.
no, it goes all the way up to 8. 8 is Washington, the state of
Okay.
Washington. Yes, well, of course they, do other things and they essentially do. But 8 years old is their requirement for school.
Wow, I
So
didn't know
right, exactly. I didn't either. Yeah, but it's like understanding, like, okay, no, we just have to do more research. But like I said, that research can be overwhelming at times. So it's good to be able to have those platforms, those programs or websites that have everything lined up for you. It's like, oh, okay, touch and go. Like, all right, oh, this works, this doesn't. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know
mean,
how
and
that
I think it's
description.
cool about your kids. Like, my kids ended up the school that I started when I started it. I did not think they'd go there because I didn't live in Denver at the time. I was living in another town in Colorado, and but just by happenstance and the way our life worked out, my son ended up starting there in third grade, and our daughter in kindergarten. And it was a expeditionary learning school, so it's very much like getting out into the community and learning and bringing people in from the community. So it's like a blending of classroom-based learning and out of school learning and adventure and camping and things like that. Um, and they had that, and that's still a fairly unique school model in this area, even though it's been around for a long time. But these new schools, like you're talking about, that you're seeing with your kids, the micro schools that are starting. I have some friends that have started micro schools. Like they're small, they're learner centered, they're blending kind of a lot of resources in the community. They're kind of like homeschooling, but in a group, in many ways. They know that they've lived it. And so it's different than like people maybe in my generation who always dreamed about it, but we didn't live it. We lived in like the old school model, and so because they've lived it, what they're going to be able to create, I think, is going to be magical. Like because they know it deep into their core, and so I'm really excited to see like what the next generation, like yours, might
You and
to
me
bring to
both.
education.
You and me both. And a lot of micro school owners are essentially homeschool parents who are like, oh, my child needs some company. And then, it starts off small and they have like a group, and then it's like, oh, it blossoms into a school. And I think that's the dopest thing. I would like to do I've said it before. I would like to do like learning hubs, like some like it would essentially have micro schools, but then again, I still not in one set area. Like I don't know. There's so much of the world to see. It's just like, even with just the United States, like there's so much that we haven't seen, even with all the places we've been to already, it's still so much more. And so we're all about the travel, and I love migrating to all the different places. I know some people see me as a little nomad or a hippie and all this good stuff. And it's like, yeah, it's just going with the wind. It
So
blows this way. We're going this
smart.
way. Yes. But I love it. I want to know more about Reschool because it's like, all right, what is it? What you doing?
Oh yeah, so I mean, I talked about the early years, but what happened was that model of having learning dollars and a learner advocate. The first learner advocates that we worked with were parents in the community. It was the first when we shadowed the families. It was a affordable housing community in Boulder, Colorado, and um, there were parents in the community who were already parents that other parents would turn to when they were like, oh, I can't find this resource for my kid, or my kid's struggling in school with this thing, and who do you know, and blah. So they became like natural like advocates for their peers. And so we paid them. Like the other thing is I want these roles to be compensated. Like people are playing an important role. So that was our first advocate network and learning dollars. And the housing authority that kind of manages those properties is very mission focused and very caring about the educational lives of the community residents in the community. So they continue to invest in that model. Like they put some of their own resources into paying some local parents and a navigator to kind of continue to carry that forward. So we didn't have to continue to do that. So we went, and the next thing we did was ran an employee benefit at two hospitals for 5 years, where Reschool was a partner. Any parent who worked in, it was a working, any parent associate who was a parent who worked in the hospitals could have access to Reschool. And so most people sought out support from our advocates. Like, my kid was just diagnosed with ADHD. I'm trying to figure out how to navigate this process, or my child's going into sixth grade. I don't know what middle school to pick, or I'm working all summer. I have no idea what to do with my kid over the summer so that they're involved in things so I can work. And so our navigators and advocates would help parents kind of solve for these problems and access resources. And then we raised a learning dollar fund alongside that. So any parent who was in a like mid to low wage department within the hospital could also have access to our learning dollars so that they could pay for those experiences for their kids, or even pay for transportation to get their kids to the experience because they were at work. And so that opened up, like we worked with thousands of families doing that over the course of 5 years. And those kids all had opportunities, and it opened doors for them over time. Like we have one girl who wanted to apply to the performing arts school, which is hard to get into because it's you have to put together a portfolio, and so she was able to get access to out of school experiences that enabled her to put together a film that she was then able to use for her application process. And she got in, and when she got in, then her dad figured out how to navigate that. So her brother got in later, and he helped their neighbors and others figure out how to navigate choice. And so that's where my interest came into play, kind of my background, which is we need to have a system that supports this, right? And so we can't fund it all with philanthropy. So much of my job has been to then now say, okay, we went for a statewide ballot initiative in 2021 where we tries to raise $140 million a year, where every kid who qualified at a certain income level could have access to learning dollars in our state, of $1,500 a year that they could use to supplement school learning with out of school learning. And it just narrowly missed. We did not pass it. But that did inspire the city of Denver to create a pilot program that was $5 million that has been operating now. It's in its second year, called My Spark. And so we're making some headway. And so much of what Reschool has done is we partner with families. We did the early stage at the housing authority. We did the benefit. Now we work mostly with community-based partners who already have families in their network, and we run our funds and our supports through those community partnerships. So one of our current partners is an organization that's Cultivando, and they mostly work with parents who are immigrants or first generation to Colorado or to the United States, to navigate systems in various ways. It could be housing, immigration, food security, and education for their children is an important part of that. And so we've partnered with them on the education side, and their families have been getting learning dollars and support from advocates for the past 3 years now. And when we've done that, we've also started to understand what are the opportunities that parents are seeking for their kids, who are the learning providers in the community who have something that they value or want or need, and how do we make that information more available and accessible for them. And so we've developed relationships with a lot of out of school providers. We've given them small grants to expand programming into communities where gaps exist. And then we've also created a couple of resources. One's called Discover Learning, where if you're a parent and you want to define learning experiences for your kids that are in certain types of activities in certain parts of the city, you can use that site to kind of narrow down the options and have like a list of places to look at. And we also have a site we created called the Denver Learning Ecosystem site, which illuminates where all the opportunities are across the city and shows us kind of where there's gaps, and we use that to talk to funders and others about why we need to invest in certain areas of the city so that we can have more kids with access in their communities. So we do a lot.
Amy.
It's just like,
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. Amy, y'all are doing some big things. Y'all are really doing some big things. That's amazing and
yeah,
so needed. So,
thanks.
so needed. Yes. I was wondering because when you were talking, like when you first started sharing, I was like, okay, this sounds kind of like Brilliant Detroit. Have you ever heard of Brilliant Detroit?
Mm-mm.
Brilliant Detroit, they basically take abandoned homes and they turn them into learning hubs, where the parent is the leader, like it's all parent led, all of them. And they've turned, I think they're turning it into Brilliant Michigan, and then they're going to go nationwide because they're going outside of just Detroit. But they have like 30 learning hubs in
Wow.
Detroit alone. But I just think that's so dope because y'all are really providing parents with the leadership that they need to understand, like, okay, this is our job. It's not going to be passed off to anyone. And then there's also the choices that are available. And then you're providing funding, which is everything. And it's so wild because we have those conversations and had them plenty of times over about the government funding that a lot of homeschoolers frown at, because they don't want any, government input into what they're doing also. But it's like, yeah, but you can't say that for everyone. Like you have to understand that there are some families who would love to have that financial support or that financial backing to get their children into these different programs. Because like you said, it gets costly, especially when you have multiples and you want your child to have those experiences. And you kind of have a little parent guilt when you're not able to afford those children with those type of things. Because I know my girls are telling me a list of things they want to get into when we get back to Arizona. And I'm like, well, we're going to check the rec center.
Yeah.
We're gonna check the rec center. We're gonna see what programs they offer. Because they talk about archery and like fencing. Like my oldest, she's so off the wall. She's just, I love her. But the thing, she keep me on my toes. She keeps me on my toes. But I want them to be able to do these things. But I also know that it has to be an affordable way that we can do it. And
Yeah.
luckily for us, we do have rec centers, but there are a lot of areas that don't have recreational programs, that don't have those type of affordable systems in place. And so y'all are actually like, all right, here, take
Yeah.
this. Like,
Because I mean, all of the families that we work with are strapped financially. That's like a choice between, do I pay for this resource my kid needs, or do we, buy food or pay for the rent?
right, right.
It's tight, and so we're trying to help solve for that. Not that that is something that we can do all on our own by any means, but there's I think there are a lot more families who would want to do like more of a hybrid or like homeschooling kind of model, but they just simply can't afford it, and then there are others who really value like things they're getting from the system. They value that that's a place where their kids can be cared for. They are learning something. They're getting some food while they're there. They have
Yeah.
aftercare, and then if they had the resources to supplement that with other things they're not getting from school, that's ideal for them. So we really try to value and honor where each family is coming from, and it's their decision and choices to make about what's best for their kids.
Indeed. And the hybrid model should be like just a home model in general because you're sending your children here, but essentially they have to come back home
Right.
and you should be supplementing. That's my my advocacy. Like I feel like every parent should be involved regardless of the school setting of your child. I feel like supplementing is necessary because you are your child's first guide, you are your child's first mentor, first everything. You're the one that they see first and foremost. I said we can, teach till we're blue in the face in the classroom, but these kids still have to go home. And whatever they see at home first is what they're going to essentially like, well, this is my normal. Like, I hear you
Yeah,
teach, but this is what I go home to, and this is what I'm used to, and this is my environment that I'm in. So unless we get the parents on board and get them to understanding how important their role is, everything we do in the traditional classroom setting is going to be null and void because it's going to get trumped when they go back home anyways.
totally. I agree. And when I had a bias going into this, but like we had researchers that worked with us when we went into the hospitals. And I think one of my biases I had early on was that there were maybe going to be some parents who didn't know what their kids needed, and what I found was that is actually not true. It's not true. Like the parents know their kids, they know where their challenges are, they know what their strengths and talents are, like inherently, because you're their parent. You see them every day. You've raised them. They're yours. But what they didn't always know is where to go to find the thing or the resource or to solve for whatever it is. And so once they had that information, they have agency. They just built their capacity and confidence to like navigate the system. We have parents who were petrified of the idea of applying for a scholarship. Some didn't even want to go sign up at the rec center for swimming lessons because they didn't speak English. And so
Mm,
there are barriers that you learn about that you help problem solve for, whether it's with the parent or with the system, to say you need bilingual people at your front desk and you need to put your stuff in Spanish because otherwise there's a whole group of people that aren't going to come. And so you just really need to meet people where they're at. And then, and like you said, like parents, are the first teachers. They are the ones who matter most to their kids, and building upon that agency you know, to be the best parent you can, and not expecting parents to have to like come to a place to do that is also something, like that schools struggle all that, and they say we don't have parents who care and show, but they can't show up a lot of the time, like they can't
yes.
get there at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, it doesn't mean they don't care. So what are some other ways that we can make sure parents are engaged?
Indeed, and I don't like that people try to adequate put that or correlate that to a parent's care because it's like no, because if they didn't care, the child wouldn't be here at all. Like the child wouldn't be here, the child wouldn't be clothed, the child wouldn't appear to be healthy as they are. They care. They have to work. Like our
Yeah.
society is set up that you have to work. You have to do something to be able to provide for your family because no one's providing for them on their own. So we have to be able to work and be able to take care of our kids, and that time has to be divided. And it's not oftentimes that it's not evenly divided because work is essential, like especially now, like everything is becoming so affordable. I know when feeding kids is like, oh my goodness, why do you keep eating? Like why do you keep eating? Go to sleep. Like go to sleep. You can't eat in your sleep. Go to sleep. But it's
I
just it's a lot. The pressures are there.
Totally. Is it okay if I ask you a question? Because I know
Of
this is your
course.
podcast, but I'm just curious because you've been traveling around the country. I don't know all the different places that you've been, but are you seeing, like, when you go to a state, are you seeing different things like in different states in terms of who are the homeschoolers based on maybe what's happening in a particular state, or do you think it looks the same in most places that you're going? I'm just curious, like, what you're.
No, that's the thing, Amy. I feel like all the states look the same. Like I have to be like, oh, where am I? Like I have to because we're traveling so much, it's like, oh, where am I? And then I remember or whatever. And it's like, but all of them look the same. All of the parents care the same. All of the expos have been like, and most of our expos are parents who are thinking about homeschooling or just want to learn more about it. So we don't get a lot of necessarily homeschool families in general, but we get a lot of parents who are like, I'm thinking about jumping in the pool, but I'm like, I got to make sure I have my life gear. I got to make sure I have all my equipment right. And I just want to make sure I have the information that is there. but all the parents care. Like everywhere we go, there are parents that care, and they all look the same. Like they all look the same. They look like caring parents who are just trying to figure it out and know that, okay, this isn't working for my child, so I'm trying to figure out what will work, and I'm trying to figure out in the best way that I can be equipped to make sure that it works right. And then I'm just there to tell them, girl, relax. Like, look at me. Like I'm all over the place. Like, understand, like it's gonna work. Like you being here is enough. And that's why I always want to tell parents, and even with listening to the podcast, you listening to this lets me know that you are equipped for this. And you may not know it, but I know it, and I know you got this. And you just gotta keep moving because it's just all about resources. And parents, parents fast forward so quickly, Amy. They go like their child's like 3, 4 years old and they're already talking about high school. And it's like, yo, just like stay here for a little bit. Okay. They're good. And understand that it doesn't take a lot to teach a child because they are like literally equipped to ask the questions. They are equipped to want the knowledge. It's just how we put that knowledge in them is what can turn them off or turn them on, whether or not they want to love learning or whether like, nah, I'm good because of them having to sit and just hear stuff be put into them all the time. Mine are doers. They want to do things. They want to put their hands on stuff. They want to actually experience as opposed to just talking about it. They want to do.
Yeah.
So that is how mine operate. And so it's all about finding what works for you. But yeah, Amy, everything looks the same. Like, like it looks the same. It really does. It's not many places except when you get, on the West Coast where there's mountains and everything else that
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, this is a bit different over here. And that's why I love Arizona, guys. But
Yeah.
because it's so beautiful as far as
Right.
the mountains and the palm trees combination and stuff. But all these places, they look the same as far as what the parents are seeking and what they're asking about.
Hmm. Because it feels like there's been, well, at least when I can tell by just reading and kind of watching the trends nationally, that there's been an uptick in people who are curious or choosing to do this compared
Yes.
to like when I worked at the department back in the day. um, the homeschool office was in my department. And all that really meant was that if you were choosing to homeschool your child as a parent, you had to like register with the state and let them know that you were
Mm.
doing that so that it wasn't seen that there was like truancy or, anything like that. So, but at that time, I think it was maybe less than 2% of the population of school age population was homeschooling. And I've been hearing more that it's upwards of like 4% in some places. So it's maybe doubled like since the pandemic. Maybe more in some places, probably where there's ESAs, I'm guessing, because it allows more people to enter into the space if resources were an issue before. But I hear you. Like we've partnered with homeschool parents too, and there's many who don't want anything to do with like government money for the exact same reasons that you talked about. So it really is a mix.
It is definitely is, but I like I said, I'm about choices. So even if it doesn't work for me, I want people to know that this is something that's available, and you have to decide whether or not you can work. Because then you turn into the government if you over here dictating what everybody else, what they want or what they don't. I had someone, what state was it? Oh, what state was it? I don't. Was it Missouri? It may have been Missouri, but she was just like the person who I talked to. She was like, "No, we in Missouri. We don't want." Let me not say Missouri in case it's not them, but either way, the state representative or the homeschool association was just like, "We don't want those fundings and da da." And I'm just like, the whole state? Like you speaking for everybody? That's wild. I could never. Like, how do you know what this other family wants? And
Right.
it's a divide in Arizona. There's a lot of homeschool groups. You see them on Facebook, and they tell you out the gate, like in their rules, don't mention ESAs. We don't talk about ESAs here, and da da da. And I'm just like, okay, that's fine. Like, but I feel like it's an option, and so I'm gonna have the option present at our expos. Whatever works for that family needs to work for that family. You can't dictate that. But I get them in the sense that they feel it's a way into the homeschool community because homeschoolers do want to be free. Like I know that's why I I like the freedom part. That's my big thing. That's why I love Arizona because they really let you be free. Like you register
Yeah,
your child and then they don't bother you no more. So it's like I love that. So I get that part, but it's just I'm a firm believer in choices.
yeah,
I want people to have choices.
same. That's been like definitely the biggest theme of my whole like life, like personal and career, is having choices for sure. And I've been lucky that I have had choices, my kids have had choices, and it's been a big goal of mine to ensure that we have a system in such a way that other people everyone has choices,
Yeah. And I
So,
love what you're doing. Colorado's on my list for next year. So
okay, well, if you
yeah,
come, look me
yes.
up. I'd love to meet you in person.
Indeed, indeed. But I love what you're doing, and I love the name Reschool because it's like, okay, well, this isn't working. Let's that's the unlearn and relearn part. It's like, okay, let's reschool. Like,
Exactly.
let's find what does work for your family, and your
Exactly.
children. So I love that, and thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank
With
you.
all that the work you're doing, how do you self-care? How do you take care of you?
Well, I like to walk my dog a lot. I've actually been tuning out from the news more recently because it was just bumming me out too much. And so I have been listening a lot more to books. I probably listened to 4 books in the last like 2 months or something, like walking or in my car while driving, and fiction books like that are like a lot. I like historical fiction. I think it's really interesting. I go hiking. We're in Colorado, so I had back surgery last year, and for 2 years I couldn't hike or do a lot of things, and so now I can again, and so I'm really psyched to be able to get out in nature more and enjoy the beauty of the space I live in. But I'm really actually a water girl at heart, and I'm in a landlocked place, and so any chance I have to get out to someplace where there's a
Some
beach or a
water.
lake or someplace, that's my favorite thing to do.
I love that. And I love that you just say you don't tuned out from the news because
Yeah,
it's such a dictator on our emotion and our energy. And that's what people don't be understand. I'm like this because I don't watch news. It's
yeah,
like, I smile and I laugh a lot because I don't watch the news, guys. I tell y'all that all the time. I'm not a big advocate for keeping up with politics. Like I'm not. I'm sorry. Like I know there's people mission for that, and I appreciate your mission. That's not my avenue. That's not where I find peace. So, um, tuning
yeah,
out and unplugging, so to speak, is necessary at times. So I'm glad that you have realized, like, oh, okay, let me
yeah.
step away for a little bit, like,
Right.
because
And,
it's gonna get back to you anyways. Like,
yeah.
girl, as soon as
Otherwise,
I call my sisters or somebody, they always want to tell me something that's happening. I'm like, oh. Like I know you don't know, but I'm like, well, why you couldn't just let me not know?
yeah, yeah. I
You
know.
just let me not know. But yeah, no, taking care of yourself is a big component because with all the work and the outpour that you do, I always want to, if you're not already doing so, I want to remind you that is something to hone in on because we gotta keep ourselves centered in this lovely world and this time that we're in because it could take a lot out of you. So
Absolutely. Well,
good,
thank
good.
you.
Yes, ma'am. And one more thing before you go.
Yes.
3 things that you would want people, if they didn't hear anything else during this conversation, what are 3 things you want to leave them with?
That we need to listen to and honor families and their choices and needs for their kids as first and foremost when we think about an education. That we need to resource learning that happens everywhere, not just in schools. Um, and that we need to create opportunities for kids that lead them to lives that are healthy and fulfilling and economically sound. And right now, we're not doing that in ways that matter for all kids. And we really we're just not investing enough in kids right now. And I feel like if we want this country to be the kind of country that is healthy and thriving, we need to invest more in our youth than we are right now.
Yes, that healthy aspect is so important. That's a big word because it's like, okay, we producing them, but are they healthy though? Like, are they healthy and happy? I'm always having the happy aspect, and happy goes with the health. So, but are they happy? Like, are they happy? So, yes, thank
And
you,
be able
Amy.
to like, you know, take care of themselves in the world when the time comes, and I'm worried about that.
Yes, yes. But just know, I know with these conversations, these help a lot for me because I was like years ago, I was big on like, oh my gosh, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, because I didn't think it was being done. But in creating this podcast and talking to the many people that I talk to, I know that the work is being done. I know that the people are doing the work. I know the change is being made. So it's like, okay, rest assured, Amy, rest assured
I
that
love that.
there are people out there being the change all over, all over. They really are. And I'm so grateful for it. And I'm grateful for the work that you're doing. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And parents, understand, like this isn't a journey. Like I talk about all the time, we don't get manuals for these little people that we're sent home with. Like we don't get any manuals, no how-to guides, no anything. It's all a trial and error. But understand that the resources are available, that the people are there. There is community, there is village, there is all of that that the narrative wants you to believe that there is not. We are better together. So keep researching, keep doing, and reach out. If you don't want to do the research, I will for you. But understand that the resources are there, the support is there, the community is there. So tap in and know that you can homeschool your kids.